Hey everybody, this is DJ, and I wanted to show off this little project I've been working on, Dungeons and Dragons Publishing Timeline. So this is an interactive map that is online now. You can check this out. There'll be a link in the description. And what I'm showing off here is a timeline of what will eventually be every product ever put out for the Dungeons and Dragons product line by TSR, by Wizards of the Coast. Currently, I've got almost every first edition and second edition core book and module. I don't have accessories in here yet and some other stuff. So let me step you through it. Basically, this timeline starts in the 70s. 1974 was when D&D is created and goes up through here is today, 2022. And if you follow the link, this will come up and you can just sort of right arrow through, or you can mouse wheel to pan around. You can click and drag, to pan around, mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Um, and the intent of this is partly for a couple of reasons. I have been collecting vintage D&D books for a while now, so I own a lot of these, maybe half or two-thirds. Uh, and I've got these checklists I've been making from TSR Archive. Here's a list of every first and second edition AD&D product by realm, the generic stuff, organized by box sets and adventures. Here's the basic. And we'll go off on a Judges Guild and We Warrior tangent in a minute. But so from here I made an Excel spreadsheet where I'm calculating, not calculating, but I'm documenting what I have and I don't have, so that when I see auctions up, I know whether or not to buy things. And this sort of led me to, there's just so much stuff. It's really hard to wrap your head around what all of this is. So I wanted to make a visual timeline, and here it is. Here is starting in the 70s, pre 1974 when OD&D was put out. There was Chainmail. There was also the Dungeon board game that led to Arniston and Gygax meeting. And this shows all 5 supplements, D&D, OD&D supplements that came out, starting with Greyhawk, Blackmoor, Eldritch Wizardry, Gods, Demigods, and Heroes, and the final one, which is back to miniature rules, Swords and Spells. And we're also going to sort of break things down by realm. So here are the first Greyhawk adventures and modules. Here is, Blackmoor. There was a big gap between the supplement and then its first modules being produced way down the road. And basic Mystara, we see when Ravenloft and Dragonlance. And it's just, to me, this was fascinating to see, when things came into existence. I didn't know, for example, that Forgotten Realms came after Dragonlance and that Planescape was way down here. I'm also including a lot of books, so you can kind of see here's the beginning of the Endless Quest line of books, and for example, in Dragonlance, we see when the Chronicles trilogy was published in comparison to the modules. For Forgotten Realms, we see when the first trilogy, starting with Darkwalker on Moonshae, came just before the box set, and then the Crystal Shard, the first of the Driss novels, came out the following year in '88. Well after Dragonlance was on its way. And there's a couple milestones I put in here. This is when Gary Gygax resigns from TSR, pushed out, however you want to describe it. Each of the editions is marked when they start. We've got the core books for all of it. So part of it too that I wanted to illustrate, I'm starting a vintage campaign, which is going to use, basically the idea is to simulate if you were in, say, high school or college in '74 and had an unlimited amount of money and could just buy everything that came out. That's what we're going to do. So starting a week from Saturday, with OD&D rules and not even the Greyhawk supplement. So the 3 allowable classes are Fighting Man, Magic User, and Cleric. That's it. And one thing I wanted to illustrate too is that the first modules by TSR didn't come out till about 4 years later. 78 was the first module, Steadying the Hill Giant Chief, the G series, G1. But in the meantime, their TSR, I think the thinking was that everyone would make their own worlds, right? You create your own setting. Gygax had Greyhawk, Blackmore. There was the known world setting that a couple of the guys had made that turned into what the basic set. But in this gap, starting in 76, early 76, TSR allowed other companies to put out modules. So here is the very first one, Palace of the Vampire Queen, by a company called We Warriors, was published in April of 76. So we're going to start with that as the first adventure we're going to do. And then Judges Guild, I've got more to fill out here. But Judges Guild started putting out little supplements, a deck of cards, and like just literally a page of like tables and stuff, some maps. And then their first adventure, proper adventure, was Tegel Manor here in mid 77. Or I think whenever I have a book straddle June, July, that's to say that I don't have a month when it came out. But Tegel Manor was the first one, and then we're going to go on and do Caverns of Thracia and Dark Tower by Janelle Jaquez. So here's a look at my gaming room. So I've got Chainmail, OD&D, all the basic ones, first, second, third, fourth, and on to fifth edition. I've got all my AD&D modules here, categorized by letter code, basic modules here. I've got Judges Guild stuff. So across this little showcase across the back wall is sort of the order that we're intending to go. So starting with We Warriors, 1976, Palace of the Vampire Queen. We're going to pop over to Judges Guild and do Tegel Manor, a couple of adventures by Janelle Jaquez, which, by the way, are getting Goodman Games remakes, which I'm really excited about. And then we're going to pop over to First Edition, AD&D, and start with I'm debating either the G series or do the sort of super campaign, which starts at T1 Village of Hamlet, Temple of Elemental Evil, the Scourge of the Slave Lord, S series, Giant series, D for the Drow in the Underdark, ending with Q, Queen of the Demon Web Pits, where you run into Lolth. So that's basically what this chart is intended to illustrate is what was published when. For example, first edition, it's interesting to me that all these modules were out in 78, and the AD&D manuals weren't, you couldn't really play it till the Dungeon Master's Guide. A lot of the combat tables were in this book. So first edition D&D wasn't sort of proper out till mid 79. So what people were doing with these books at the time, I'm kind of unclear, but that's what we're going to figure out. So there you go. That is sort of the general gist of this. Feel free, I'll have the link in the description. Feel free to poke around it. I'm going to have eventually fill in toys and games and other stuff. And here's another, if my forward arrows will work. I'm also going to put up some of the periodicals, Dragon Magazine, Dungeon Magazine. So in 75 was the first Strategic Review, was the zine that I believe TSR was putting out at the time. We're going to have printouts of this in my game. And then there was, I think, 7 issues of that before it essentially turned into Dragon Magazine Volume 1. So there you go. Here is just a quick look at most of the first and second edition core books and modules. I'm going to keep filling this in as we go. Next up is to fill in accessories. If anyone sees any errors in this, drop into comments too. If there's something you'd like me to fill in next, please list it, and I will sort of take cues from everyone. So I also put in here what module codes came into existence. So if you wanted to do them kind of in publishing order, like we're intending to do, you could sort of follow along. Also, give me feedback too. Do you think I should just go when we hit the TSR books? By the way, Quagkeep was the first Greyhawk book before the Gord the Rogue series came into existence way out years later in '85. I also find it interesting that after Gary Gygax resigned from TSR was when most of the Greyhawk books came out. I kind of assumed that he would have stopped, he would have written them all before he left, but most of them were after. Anyway, so for the first edition, do you think we should go by publishing order? Just go through G, go through D, do Tomb of Horrors, and just like kind of straight through? Or should we do it sort of the super module format, which will kind of cover almost all these early modules except for Tomb of Horrors by going, T1 Village of Hamlet, which is over here, and then Temple of Elemental Evil, which that it will sort of flow through as a full campaign if you do it this way. But I'm worried we're going to get a little stuck in Temple of Elemental Evil for a long time, and it'll kind of lose the spirit of going by publishing order. Anyway, give me feedback. Another question I have is when to pop over or back and forth between the basic stuff. I'm really excited to play in Search of the Unknown and Keeping the Borderlands and all this early expert stuff, some classic modules there. So anyway, there is my Dungeons and Dragons publishing timeline. Feel free to click the link and check it out for yourself. Give me any feedback. If you've got any errors in here, let me know. And let me know what you'd like me to focus on next. All right, this is DJ. Hope you enjoyed this. Talk to y'all later. Bye.